Hello, I'm David from David Christopher's, and welcome to another episode of What in the World is he going to do with that stem this time? Because I like to do really crazy things and see where they take us, because usually when I do things like this, I've never made one before, and we'll just make it and see how it comes out. So the first thing we're going to need today is we're going to need a container with a lot of weight to it. This is a nice magnesium oxide urn, kind of a planter that we're going to use. The second thing we're going to need is styrofoam, and because of the depth of this container, we're actually going to need quite a bit of styrofoam. So take your bread knife, because it's not just for bread, and the serrated edges along the back side of it will go right through the styrofoam, and you don't have to make a completely hole cut. You just kind of score it about halfway down, and then you're good to go. And then because it's round, we don't need round shape. We're just going to kind of shave the edges a little bit, and we want this packed as tightly as possible in the bottom of our container as it can be. And then we're going to glue the edges. We'll add a little bit of glue on the corners, just so when we press that down in there, it doesn't go anywhere. And as long as your bottom piece is really secure, it helps the rest of them stay where you want them. So we're just going to repeat same process until we get to the top of our container. Add a little bit of glue, so this glues down to the one we just placed inside. Kind of twist it a little bit so that glue spreads out. At this point, I'm going to wedge a little bit in. Add glue, because we're engineering here. We're building something we never want to come apart. So just remember that as you go, the more that you can do to stabilize it, the better. So especially in the middle is where I find I typically need more stability, because if your bottom is glued down and your top is glued to the middle, then you're pretty secure at that point. But we want to make sure that this middle layer is really well glued in. Okay. So now you can see that part is glued in. We're going to add one more layer to the top. And this one we want to be a little bit wider than the rest of them, because we want it to cover most of the round space on the urn. So then all we have to do is make sure that this is not square anymore. A little bit more. And wedge that in. That's not going to go anywhere once we get a little glue on it. It's actually hard to get out without glue. So that's very good. That makes you know that you have cut it to a good size. A little bit of glue, not going anywhere. All right. Once our urn is completely filled with styrofoam very precisely, we are going to add sheet moss, which we buy in bulk, because you don't want the ugly styrofoam showing. So sheet moss is called sheet moss because it kind of comes out like a sheet, sometimes better than others, but it's a natural product. You can't, always get exact perfection. So we're going to dust off a little bit of the dirt from the bottom, and we're going to layer some sheet moss. And you can just kind of piece this together. Just make sure that most of the green side is up. Let's see. and kind of tuck it down around the edges of the styrofoam. Fill in any loose spaces that you may have, and you may have to readjust after you start putting some really thick stems in, but this should, for the most part, stay where you want it. You could always add some pins in it to hold it if necessary. Okay, so now we're covered our styrofoam completely so that we have a nice start. We have some natural materials, but this is going to be a glitzy tablescape for an event. So what we want to do at this point is we're going to build our base, because what I like at events like this, when you've got a 72 or 84-inch round table, something quite large, I like to do something very large in the center that is a focal point that allows people to see through it, but really has a lot of depth to the height of it, and something at the base, but at eyesight, when you're actually sitting down, you're going to be able to see through it. So we're going to build a gigantic topiary. I'm going to take my metallic gold manzanita stems and start gluing them in. And I know that most people, most designers, most design professionals will tell you have to use 3. And that's why I'm going to use 4, just to mess with those people that say you have to use 3. Because we don't have to play by the rules. This is design work. You do what looks right, not what somebody tells you to do. Okay, so now we've got our topiary base started, but what we want to do is I'm going to take some wire, and I have actually some gold wrapped wire here. I'm going to double it up so that I get it a little bit tighter. I'm going to go around the inside branch of this manzanita and tie that together really tight. And just kind of twist until you don't think it's actually doing anything anymore. We're going to cut that. And don't worry about the wire not being exactly the same color as the manzanita. We're going to hide it. So at this point, we're just going to kind of bend our manzanita out. And you just want some good curve to the pieces. You don't want them all straight up in the middle. We want everything to kind of bend out from itself. Just be careful that you don't bend completely away from the stem, and because some of these stems are what we consider hand wrapped. They're a molded stem, but they're wrapped together at the core, and if you bend too hard at that wrapping place, you can tear the stem. All right. But now we have a nice base. We've got some branches kind of coming out, very three-dimensional. It's going in every direction because remember, this is a round table. We want people to be able to see something beautiful from all sides. So at this point, we're going to start layering in some of our glittery stems. And you don't want to get a lot of things exactly the same color. I know people like to take fabric, they like to take certain things and try to match colors precisely. You don't necessarily want a precise match of colors. You don't want colors that clash, but you don't necessarily have to have colors that are exact matches. Because really, if you do that, especially with glitter and metallics, things like that, you're going to miss a lot of the detail that you really could see if you had not had exactly the same color. So as we can see, I have more of a metallic gold manzanita, and I'm going to be filling in with this champagne glitter fern that's very nice and light and wispy. And we're glued it into the base, but we're also going to wire it to the middle here. because you do not want this to move at all. And you'll see that once we get finished with this and actually have so much on there that you won't want to move it, but you should be able to move it because we've glued and wired everything in correctly. Okay, that piece is wired in. And glue is something that I know a lot of you probably don't have a giant electric skillet full of glue just lying around the house. Unless you're like me and that's kind of your thing, then you may have a glue gun. You can use a glue gun. There is no rule that says you have to use one thing or another. I actually burn myself a lot with a glue gun because I move too fast gluing things together. Once we get into the just gluing part of this, into the branches, I will dip very quickly into my glue pan, scrape some of the excess off, and then move on. Whereas a glue gun, I have to kind of place it down, and I'm just kind of fly by the seat of my pants and will burn my fingers off. So we're gonna kind of go out toward the ends of our manzanita branches with this glitter fern. So I'm gonna turn it so you can kind of see that I am getting this all out toward the tips, because we don't want everything in one spot. We want it seen from all directions. Okay. Now I'm going to take some of my glitter fern and wrap around these branches really tight so that it holds it in place. Okay, we've got our glitter fern on the edges now. So now what we've got is, as I'm sitting down, I can see around this, but I still have something incredible and large to see, that I can take up a large part of the space without interfering with their line of sight. So we're going to also fill a little bit of the container down here at the bottom with some of this champagne glitter fern, glitter pine. And we're just going to cut this apart, because anytime you've got multiple branches on one stem, sometimes you can cut it apart and make it go a little bit further. We just want to bring some of that gold color down into the base so that it's not all up at the top. So this is the part where I tell you, you can really see how quickly we can glue things into place. And then we're going to use something a little different shape, similar color, not exactly the same. This one has a little less gold. And we're just going to kind of go outside, in between where the glitter pine we just put down was. You don't want them to occupy exactly the same space. Okay, now that that is in there, we're going to add some of this. It's kind of a glittered smilax stem that's got a little bit of a rose gold ball on the stem. And we're going to add this, because this matches so well with the bottom, we're going to mix it into the top up here. Cut our tag off, add a little bit of glue, not a lot, doesn't take a lot. Just make sure that once you've placed it, you don't move it. If you do, you're going to need to add more glue. And you'll notice how these stems have a dark frame, and that really actually helps to break it up in between the rest of the gold that you see. If it was all solid gold, again, going back to the not matching everything specifically, it actually works to your advantage to make things show up very well. We're going to wire this in. Spin and repeat. Because we want a little bit of shiny of this ornament up in the top. Nearly broke my stem. Okay. So again, kind of in between what we've already done. You want to fill in some of that space so this tree shape really starts to take form. Remembering to go back, and most of the things that we sell, most of the things that we want to use are going to be wired. So you'll notice how all of these individual fern stems are wired out on the branch. That's because you want to be able to place it exactly where you want. You're a professional. You need to bend every stem into the exact place where you want it to be, and it should stay there if it's a well done stem. I've got one more of these because I'm a little OCD about things coming apart. Okay. So those are in place. We're now going to take these platinum ridged balls, and you go, oh, that's too big. It's really not. Very rarely is it just incredibly too big for something. We are going to add a little piece of wire, and then we're going to kind of tuck this down. You keep kind of pushing until you get a good spot with your wire to wire it onto something, and then it's going to stay. We're going to do one at the other side, and they do look a little large right at the moment, but we have lots of other ornaments. First ornament we're going to put in is the largest one because we want to layer out from that smaller sizes. So on this one, we're going to do the same thing. You got to be kind of forceful and just push your way down in there, and then see if you can get your hand to find the wire and wrap the wire around a branch. And then we're going to add these white tipped gold pine cones. Same idea with those. And we're just going to push them down. Let me turn this where you can see it. We're going to push down inside that sedum that we added. And then we're going to try and get our finger around something. Not always the easiest task. Just be patient. Make sure you find a good spot to wire it to, and then it will stay. So we're just going to repeat this about a dozen times, continuing to add ornament after ornament, layer upon layer, because layers are good, not just for supervillains. Made a bad joke. But we're going to add some at the top. Oh, I can't fit any more. You can always fit more. You have to stop at some point. But I do want to use some of those stems that I was talking about that have the smaller mixed size balls on there. And this is a rose gold, keeping with our rose gold thing that's going on. And I'm actually going to glue some of this into the top of the arrangement because I want some other sized balls coming out from that. Anywhere where you feel like you have a little bit of a gap, that these 100mm ornaments were just a little too big, we're going to kind of glue these in a little bit and go over the top of that. So we've filled in these spaces with this smaller branch that we don't want showing. Anywhere where you can see some of the wire that you used to wire the ornaments in, you want to hide that. You don't want anyone to be able to see how you put it together. You just want them to see the beautiful aspects. And leave everything else a mystery. Remember, a magician never reveals their secrets, and you want this to be a magical piece. So you can continue adding to your heart's content anywhere where you feel like there could be a place missed. You can remember that you can bend in any direction that you need to bend it, and that is a fantastic quality of a good stem. Okay, now we are finished with our topiary form. Very well balanced on all sides. We're going to finish up the bottom here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these plastic pine cones that we used in the arrangement. I'm going to take the caps off of them, and I'm going to use some of these stems, a little bit of glue on it, and I'm going to put it up into the middle of the pine cone all the way up. It's got to be long enough to go to the end of the pine cone, and that's going to glue that in there. And then all I have to do, dab of glue, push it in. Done. So we're going to do that on a few of these ornaments here. Most of the time that just pops right off, and it will be a good size to go into the bottom of the pine cone. And we have, I do have multiple shapes of pine cones. So I have more of a strobus cone, a traditional pine cone, and then an ostraca cone shape. And we're going to use one of each kind of down here at the base, because we want to use similar colors top to bottom. We don't want to just have one color at the top and then it fades to a different color. You want to balance everything out really well. We cut up a little bit of this ball. Just make sure you get it into the styrofoam well. A little bit over here. That's why I save a lot of my stems, because I usually end up being able to use them some way or another. Now, for kind of the final piece that we're going to add, we're actually going to add these icicles. So hard that I'm just going to cut the wire string and use a piece of wire. There. Now the manzanita part of this tree is going to be stiffer than the rest of the tree. So we're going to wire a few icicles to the manzanita portion of the tree. And don't be afraid to get really far out from the tree in order to do this. If you have excess wire, just cut as much of it off as you can. You don't want to show your mechanics. Toward the top middle, they won't be as impactful as the ones out on each individual limb out here, but you need them to provide balance so that all the icicles aren't at the very end. Apart from that, we're going to add a couple of these rose gold poinsettias to the base of our arrangement, which is going to provide us a nice color that goes with our rose gold ornaments. They fit really well. Some are going to come shaped, most will not. So we want to get a really good shape before we glue this in. We're just going to tuck a couple of them in real deep. Again, we're still hiding a bit of our mechanics, but we're shaping the poinsettias. And on a poinsettia like this, we actually have two different leaves. So you want to make sure that all the beaded leaves are not together and all the metallic leaves are not together. You want a nice mixture in there. And then we're going to place this one on the opposite side. And it looks like I have just about finished here. So this is our piece. And remember, this is something you can do in lots of different color combinations. You could do this out of natural sticks, pine, red berries, red balls. You can do this in a lot of different color combinations. But this is a really stunning piece for a round table or for a table stand.
Hey guys, Jennifer here, and if you like this episode with David Christopher's, make sure that you subscribe so that you can see more weekly inspirations and how-tos so you can make beautiful things for your home, parties, offices, whatever the occasion may be. We hope to see you back soon.